allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which is nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Next on the agenda is public comment. Public participation is encouraged in the Laurel School District. All meetings of the board will be open to the public except provided by law. Audience members may address the board during public comment for non-agenda items or during the discussion of the relevant printed agenda. Your attendance is welcome. If you plan to speak to the board, please look over the information on the agenda, complete the public comment section on the card located at the back of the room, provide it to myself or Superintendent Torres. To address the school board members, please come to the podium, identify yourself, and briefly state your concern. Public participation is a right that carries certain responsibilities, such as informing oneself in advance of the issues being discussed, voluntarily being as brief and germane as possible, not unduly repeating remarks others or you have already made, and showing respect at all times for the rights and opinions of others, whether citizens, board members, school district employees, or students. Thank you for your involvement in Laurel Public Schools. Do I have any items not on the agenda for comment? Okay, I'm taking that as a no, so we're moving forward. Next on our agenda is correspondence. Yet again, our community is greatly appreciative of their donations. So Marsh McLean Agency donated to our school lunch, of course. Excuse me, I just flipped myself out of everything, so let me make sure I'm in. I had myself all ready to go. I believe that was for our lunch program. No, was under repair. Thank you very much. So we do appreciate that, and we do appreciate their contribution to Laurel Public Schools. Next on our item for agenda is presentation. We will hear from Shane in regards to moving forward on our owner's rep report for our new buildings.
Good evening, trustees. If I would start off with, we are currently design-wise proceeding very well. We're well past 50% DDs, and we're currently budgeting with Langless, trying to get our budgets in alignment. We did put out the bid package for the Geo Piers. That was bid out. We had a good response. We had 3 bidders. 262 to 268 was our bid spread, so it tells us we had a very good bid. And right now, Jason's just working on the final vetting, and then that's one of the packages. That's an early bid package we wanted to get out, as we had talked about all along. And that would be up for all the piers that we're going to have to punch all the way around footings of the building. Second one was we did a early request for proposals for our steel packages as well, and those are currently in process of being reviewed. Be able to award that. I think tomorrow is the due date on the scoring, or sorry, Thursday is the due date on the scoring from the committee. And so then we'll get them on, which will actually help our process tremendously. Yeah, having them involved, especially with our structural engineers, and then any potential early steel procurements that we can do, lock in our price early. With that, a couple things, the annexation that we had talked about, you have a packet in front of you. Working through this with both Chad and Brian, I felt kind of where we landed on what our expectation was that we thought we would be needing to do that would meet all of our needs to give us a safe school. Kids can access the site. We've got sidewalks. We've got all of our entries. We also have the access from the middle school coming across Alder. That's all in place here. This will be significantly different than what the city is going to request from us. And with that, I think what I would like to do is give a little bit of background, because Chad and Brian is our civil engineer from Sanderson Stewart. They met with Mark Yard, and they're going to be the ones helping us through this process with the city. With that, I'll let you go through kind of where we landed based on what they were asked.
Okay, hi everyone, good to see you all again. So your packet has kind of everything today. Early in the process, those that were part of pre-bond all the way through where we're at Committee and Design Now. I started in with talking to the city, knowing that we had chosen the Mogan site, and we started discussing. We've got long meeting minutes that aren't in here. I can send them upon request. They kind of talked about our expectations, their expectations, and with that in mind, we submitted through Shane and Matt the annexation agreement. That is the total package. It is included here so you guys understand what went to planning. And in response is that first message that's quoted here. So outside of what we thought would happen, planning came back and said, well, we want more. So from that point, we submitted to them traffic, and we talked, at least to a certain degree, fire. Did we get them official numbers? So those are in, and ended up meeting with them, and their expectations in the planning agreement or the annexation agreement that city standards being met means everything, absolutely everything, it being kind of on county roads, and what isn't possible, and that's outlined on criteria and requirements, section 209, 403 of the MCA. We can't spend bond dollars on city infrastructure. We just simply can't. So what we can do is extend water mains, and that is the only thing infrastructure that is mentioned in the MCA. So we always anticipated that. So in this, letting all of you know where we're at, the $400,000 version of this is what we always intended. That's what we're going to resubmit to planning, and we will go to city council with or without their recommendation, and coming back to discuss with them, well, this is what we can do, and the only thing that they can do after the fact is assess an SID to the school district. Now that becomes an annexation agreement, and it becomes a major conversation with everyone in the table, including Matt, and how that would be paid for. So really, we can handle $400,000 out of our bond budget. That's already budgeted, it's known. But if they assess an SID, a special improvement district, it could be that $1.2 million that shoulders the school district out of pocket. So
They can assess an SID to us without,
that's where the agreement, so we need to go negotiate with city council, is what it becomes.
But with that SID, they'd have to notice all the landowners that are butted up to that, would they not? So even the landowners across the
In
street?
theory, yep. But where it's at now is where the end of our road stops. We will get it in, and we just want to make sure that everyone here understands what the implications could be and starting that negotiation process.
As far as, just to butt in a little bit here, I do have a call into Dan Simmons. I just want to make sure that we actually get, the legal play on this 100%, that, hey, can we spend money on this or not? I don't believe we can, but that is something that Dan would have to, for sure, we don't want to be trying to play counsel up here. But I've talked to him enough that I think this is starting to get outside of what our bond was intended for, and he would need to weigh in as well, if we could even spend money on it. So you are obviously able to spend money to get your sewer and your water to have to function at the school. But a lot of the components that I'm seeing here are things that I think might be above and beyond what we would be able to spend money on.
Would you like me to walk, excuse me, would you like me to walk you through it in any further depth? Like if we turn to the exhibits, the intended improvements is $1,000 that we assumed budgeted, is very typical for school improvements. We get new sidewalks, crosswalks, curb cuts for drive approaches, our utility extensions that we need to operate, and that is kind of it. Any other components, Brian? Yeah, that's why Brian's here. And then to go out, the exhibit is called Planning Improvements. That is the planning division's, what they came back and asked for, or they thought was what was appropriate, is widening of all three roads that the property abuts, full city sewer, water, all the way around to get it to the point where any further development would pick it up. Curb and gutter both sides. And yeah, I think that's, again, Brian can tell me if I missed anything, but it's substantially different, and redeveloping roads is a whole different game than it just making sure infrastructure gets to this intended school.
Is there a list of city standards that we can point to, or they can point to that are requirements?
Yeah, I could have attached that. It's a big document,
Okay.
but it's available at the City Planning Division website on their. In theory, they are, but a public entity like a school district versus private entity, they're very different components, right? So the way that your school buildings and your school infrastructure in total is funded is different than private. So they're assessing a singular standard from one public entity to another without considering where those dollars come. Does that make sense?
Is there any kind of a cost? Has there been any kind of a cost analysis done between if the city doesn't give any versus going through the state? And how much extra that's gonna cost?
Yeah. We haven't run that yet, but we would consider, if that is our next option, I mean, we would obviously come back to you guys, because what that does do is it leaves you with most likely a mounted dosing system for your sewer, and we have to put in wells. And we'd have to put in a storage tank for fire suppression. So it's not a clean break on our side, but we can tell them no, and this is what we're gonna do, and we submit through the state, absolutely. Already talked to the state, and they said they're fine with us permitting through that. But then that leaves you guys with ongoing maintenance with sewer systems and obviously fire suppression systems as well, because you have a tank.
It seems to me, though, that the city's not willing to really extend a hand anyway. We're going to end up maintaining all of that stuff anyway, and paying for all of it to be put in, so it's almost seemingly a wash.
We don't get to that because this can be I mean, they have the ability to allow us annexation without all these enforced uses. The other thing that will be pretty tough about this, if you drive out there, the blocks down, we put all this infrastructure in. You go off our site either way, and there's no infrastructure to tie into, so it's like an island into itself.
Right, so what's the point of having a widened street that's fed by narrow streets?
It's what they currently have, they just have one more block of.
Really, the messaging is, we will go in and we will ask for a hearing to the city council. And it really becomes we as a group go and discuss with the city council what needs to be done.
Okay, so East 8th Street, Alder, and East Maryland, those are city streets. We are, but our property is in the county.
If we annex, it would not be.
Right, but at the same time, from your letter from Kurt Markegard, he already is stating that they know that that city is not, those streets are not up to city standards. So it's our problem that they're not up to city standards, and so now it's our right to use taxpayer dollars to put them up to city standards. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I think it's more than just city taxpayers, because the district extends far beyond the city's limits. So now, in my mind, you're right, you're having people who live 20 miles from town paying for streets inside Laurel. Right, and people even in a separate county, exactly right, that would be paying for city streets in the city of Laurel. Which again, I think that, like you said, is a public entity, dealing with a public entity, they need to take into consideration the funding sources, that this isn't private dollars, these are public dollars that extend beyond the city's locality.
And it was already preset public dollars too, that
With predefined purpose and use.
I just was wondering, I'm looking at the planning improvements from the city planners, I guess. There's curb and gutter around the north side of East Maryland, on the south side of East 8th. Are they asking for that along county property? It's non-city property? They want us to do that?
Bringing up the full city standard, which, if they were, if we were to move forward with bringing city standard, we could use that as a way to rule it out. But there was all saying, yes.
That hasn't been city standard for how long? Jenny?
And hopefully we can get, again, this is just the starting point. We'll have to go back to them, and then hopefully we can just come to a good, amenable agreement with them that they feel, that they're getting enough of what they need, as being responsible for the city, and we're getting what we need, that we've got the budget to do it, without stealing from the schools, right? Because this is what it comes down to. We'll literally be taking pieces away from the school.
Our children, they'll be taking pieces away from our children for curb and gutter.
He didn't want to say that, but
I'm not.
I'll say it. I'll say it.
I'm gonna say there will be pieces of the
You be
school.
nice, I'll say it.
Yeah.
Yes.
one other question I would have, just after this meeting, the board is aware of this, and obviously I think they'll be okay with our proposal as planned. What is the timeframe then, Chad and Shane, when you guys meet?
We would set up another meeting with Mark Yard as soon as they could get us in. And then see what comes out of that. And then we would still probably jump in anytime, something different. We would say, no, this is what we want you to take forward to the city council. And at that point, they will bring their recommendation to the city council. Now, whatever that recommendation would be, not to grant us that,
Yeah, we don't know.
information or not, it's still the city council's decision. And at that point, they have to make that decision whether to grant us, if they're gonna allow us to annex or not.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we will resubmit probably as quickly as tomorrow or the following day. Like, we're ready, we know what we've got, we know what we're intending to do. So when we go in, we will immediately ask for.
What I felt was important is to make sure you knew what we were doing and that you understood how we were approaching it. And if you had any other issue with that, if we needed to take a different tack, I thought it was important that we had you understand what we were doing.
You mentioned special improvement districts. So if at any time is there hidden costs that they could levy on us in the future after approval of annexation that was not agreed upon? So like in 5 years, they say, oh, now we need to bring it up to standards, or?
So I think the SID can meet exactly at any time. The school board would sign, or no, they is issued a waiver of right to protest a special improvement district, which that is enforceable for a 20-year period. So we can have in that 20-year period, they can bring up a SID improvements.
The issue, though, we would get into it would be a back and forth with, well, we're going to issue this SID to you, and you could say, well, we're not approving funding for it, so it's not going to go, and then it could get into, right? You're not going to build a water project if you're not going to award the funding. So
yeah.
it kind of takes that light on, which hopefully we can just work through this and not end up in that position.
Can't get blood for the turnip, Shane.
Right. Absolutely.
This information's coming from the planning committee, or is it coming from the planner?
Planning department.
Yeah, so we had Kurt, Matt Wheeler, and their engineer at the table.
You met with the planning committee,
Not beyond those three.
not the city county planning? Okay.
Any comments, questions from public audience? All righty. Thank you very much. Do you have anything else? Oh, we are not done yet? Okay. Okay, moving on.
It came to light at the building committee meeting.
Oh, this is the next one. Okay.
that kind of took everybody by surprise that I could see.
Jane, do you have another copy that just the public audience can kind of just take a peek at? They're willing to pass it around. They're pretty good about that, just so they can see what you're talking about too.
Well, this is not official, this
Okay.
is literally saying what we think we can do to, what came out of that building committee. I think was a misunderstanding between what was developed during pre-bond and what was showing up on site and what you actually thought you were getting. I know that was a surprise look on everybody's face. Oh, okay, this is a big deal. I wanted to make sure that we were addressing it. We think we are able to address it on the Logan site. Where we would not be able to address it is on the west side. There's not enough room on the west side to expand.
Yeah, talk, go back, they don't know what you're talking about, what we misunderstood.
So during the building committee meeting, obviously they're presenting plans where we're currently at in design development. And one of the questions came up was the size of the court for high school. This is not a full high school court, it's a junior high court.
What's the difference, Shane?
74 to 84, 74 feet by 80 to 84 feet, and then 42 to 52 width-wise. Now, the length is not that, adding the length isn't as tough as when we make it deeper. Our structural steel goes up considerably, and it's not real linear either, so it's fairly expensive to expand this. At the west site, we would have to shift the gym, is what you and I talked about. The gym would have to rotate and would kind of take out what we're trying to accomplish with bringing that road through in the parking lot and all that. So I don't think west is a consideration. This will be a middle school gym. We do think we can fit it at the high school without having to move the building anymore. I think you were able to fit that in last time we talked. So there's still a cost, but Chad did come up with something today when we were talking about this that I think is a really good idea, and I will let him kind of present that we wouldn't have to quite be as wide, but it has to do with the bleachers. So
Yeah. So, to give just a little more background, because the reason I'm here is I've been part of this since the very beginning. When we were planning which school, which location, we had gym sizes. And I think what happened in the mix of all of the various diagrams is that we had a junior high size gym shown every time.
On west.
On
both.
West, on Mogan, when we studied graph, that was just the scale that we worked with. Not thinking from our team, I think it's just one of those things that got overlooked, was that your elementary schools didn't need a full-size gym. We heard throughout that community use was important, but it's not that common that school districts will have full-size gyms everywhere. Like last Sunday, I was at Will James with my son playing basketball. That's not a full-size gym, right? It's just typically the size of school, size of gym. So when we were presenting it, I think Chris was actually the first to bring it up. Like, wait, this isn't a high school size gym? Like, it's junior high, elementary size. It's a small court. And in response, we made it work. And if it is absolutely critical, what Shane was talking about at West, we can fully rotate that gym and make it fit, but I wouldn't go down that. So coming back to where Shane left off, what we were able to do was shift some of the program around, pick up the extra square footage we need, and we were able to make it fit. Within hours, we found a solution. What this diagram that I brought tonight shows is that to try to save some money, but salvage that scale of gymnasium, if it's okay to not have the full 230 seats for spectators, that would be more so for assemblies. We can size it by reducing the gym by almost 6 feet. It's 5'4" 3/8" to CMU nominal size. And what that allows us to do is you'd have 3 rows of bleachers extended. That's 138 seats for spectators during the game. And then during assemblies or otherwise, you could fully extend. But what that means is those bleachers reach out onto the court. It's not atypical. Again, I can use the example of Will James having just been there and saw that it's a similar condition. It's an older way to deal with the problem, but it's still viable.
How does the committee feel?
I think that's viable. I guess I would like Andrew's input too on what he thinks. But I think that that gives us, I mean, the games that are going to be held over there are going to be lower attended games. They're going to be C squad, maybe JV games. So we're not going to need hundreds of seats for people anyway. So I think that I'm happy with that solution to get
Really
a full-size
practice-
gym.
Practice facility is where it's gonna be mostly utilized. Our C and JVs will still be at the middle school like we always have, where we have 1,000 seats or whatever. But it's gonna be used for your C squad practices, maybe your, well, 8th grade's over here, 7th grade's over, something, so we could keep kids from going as late or as early. Andrew, do you have comments?
Yeah, that was
Come on up to the mic.
That was my first thought on these two gyms is we probably won't use them for games with spectators, but if we could just extend the court, basically paint lines, even if they went underneath the bleachers or something, those bleachers all the way in, we could still utilize these as full courts for practice purposes for our travel teams, things like that, AAU stuff, and then it'd be fully utilized. And most of the time, these elementary schools, you'll only need the full bleachers out and you won't be using the court. It'll be for assemblies, things like that.
Dan?
So Chad, and I guess to follow up on Andrew's comment, then on the west side, could that be achieved, or do we got to extend the building lengthwise in order to achieve the distance?
It's a much more substantial change. Of
Even if we went
That
wall
smaller
to wall on a thing, it's just simply not big enough, even in the current footprint, wall to wall on the. No, notwithstanding any out of bounds, so no, because again, for practice purposes, out of bounds. Or we could get the full court paint lines in that room without extending the building. So,
Yeah, no.
okay.
That, with the K through 2, is even smaller still. Those smaller boundaries have already been accounted for.
Yeah.
So it's compressed to, it's minimal for a middle school size court. It's elementary and middle school, it's the same size.
Dan?
I was gonna say, my opinion on this is that if we're getting a larger court that we can use for practice without sacrificing the bleacher space and it's not costing extra money, then that's great. But at West, I don't really see the point because the kids that are gonna be using this, it's nice because everybody here is on one campus for the most part and they can walk back and forth. You throw in West, who's gonna even use it for practice? All the kids are gonna have to drive. A lot of this you're probably talking about, when you're saying JV, you're talking 15-year-olds. A lot of them may not be driving. It's just not accessible like it is here. So I think we're fine with one.
And I think in the long term, you're talking about traveling teams using that, it's still a full-size court, it's just a middle school court. It's not like walking into a West Current gym or Grass Current gym, it's not that. It's you're walking into a gym, just a few feet shorter, a few feet narrower. But it's gonna have 6 baskets, it's gonna be usable for practices. I mean, you're not, it is what it is, but I don't think there's an issue making it happen.
Just, I guess it's a little disappointing, to be honest with you, because it would have been nice. I mean, I guess my vision for the community would have been, we could have hosted probably a pretty big tournament and been able to use those full facilities and, help our community with those. Those bring in a lot of money because people are coming into, our area and helping our community. But, I mean, I know that we're budgeting tight anyways, so it's something that we have to just kind of put in and deal with, I get at this point, so.
I agree, and that's why I think it was, when we talked in the committee too, it's like if we could do, ideally it would be great to do both, but at one, let's do that at the new site, because it's the new building, kind of gonna be the gym, if you will, and then also proximity to the other gyms that we already currently use. It made the most sense to use it, to do it there. And if it can be done cost effectively to, you know, I think that's a great solution to something that was not anticipated, right? As we were
Yeah.
planning, we should have probably, that's probably on both sides. We probably should have clarified again the gym sizes, but, you know, way back. So I'm glad we were able to catch it now on DVD instead of like we're walking through and you're like painting the lines and we're like, wait a minute, that seems small. So I'm glad we caught it now instead of later. So I think it'll still be a great facility to use.
And we've confirmed that the bond language didn't read full-size gym.
I have it pulled up. Bond language is in your packet, if you want to pull that up just to be on the safe side. But to my understanding, it did not.
One of the things that our team discussed after the fact that might have started the confusion is that we had the auxiliary gym plans in the high school bond. And in our minds, that was your tournament facility, because that was a substantial auxiliary gym with 2 full-size courts. And where the elementaries were not part of that conversation directly, suddenly we didn't get that other bonds. We just have to be careful not to fill a gap with this elementary. And right now, we can get it done. We can get you that full-size court, but ways to save money and do it a little bit differently, or we leave it as we redesigned it as of last week. You can have 230 seats, you have a full-size court. There are no drawbacks to it. There's plenty of space from the lines to the walls, gives you that safety factor for the out of bounds, etc. It's just, do we need to spend that extra money when we could take a half measure and save a little bit?
And we do want to push those bleachers in. That 6.5 feet or 7 feet when it comes to structural that's a big deal.
Yeah. Steel tonnage equals money.
Yeah.
We have an estimate on maybe this sort of what's presented right here with the shortened of the compression of the 3 rows. What does this change the budget on that approximately?
I came up with this today, so we haven't run numbers against it.
So it's about 800 square feet less. So isn't that what you had said?
It ends up being 512
Or 500?
once I got the bleachers.
We'd have to run the footage on it, but you can take, just rough Gorilla is $350 to $400 a foot for that type of a gym. So
Say
that's,
350, 400, 425, 450.
well, that's for the school. Gym is a little bit of an anomaly because there's such open space, right? It's not like you're building a ton of walls and ton of doors. So gym's probably not quite as expensive as main building.
We're averaging.
Yeah, you're gonna be in that 350 to 400 range on that gym.
$150,000
Oh, yeah.
to save that. It's pretty good.
And that's just rough guerrilla math, and because we don't know exactly what the impact would have been. That 6.5 feet could deepen our steel and the weight of our steel up tremendously, because it's not really a nice linear. The longer you get, that steel goes up quickly, so it's more. We get expensive very fast. So if you guys can work with being able to have those first 3 rows out, 120 people being able to come to this facility and still use the gym, and then when you have a school meeting or whatever, pull them all the way out, and it does creep into the lines a little bit. I mean, that saves us a ton of money and still accomplishes what you guys would like to do with the gym, I believe, from what I just heard.
I think that's a fair compromise. That's my thought.
And yes, I'm glad we caught it now. That would have been a big surprise, I think, to everybody.
Any comments, questions from the audience, public? Trustees, anything else? Chris?
In terms of, I'm gonna go back to annexation, has a petition been filed with the city, or have you just had conversations with the planner?
So we did submit an official annexation, which they said they didn't like, obviously.
Okay, did a
we
waiver
had
of
a meeting.
protest get signed as well? A waiver of protest for the SIDs that they
Yes,
required?
There was a waiver of protest that went in with the original application.
But we're gonna have to resubmit is
Yeah.
what we're getting at. And this, we wanted to make sure that you saw what we're angling to resubmit.
B, we submit.
Never know what he's gonna tell us. He could tell us that. I would hope not, because they didn't do anything with the first one, so.
Yeah, it's still active.
Who is it who signs that waiver of protest?
Oh, you did.
It was Matt.
It's in here. It was Matt.
Matt, yeah. But that's all part
Sorry, I
of the
didn't
whole
see that.
submission. That's part of the-
Yeah. Well, it is possible to submit it without too. You can refuse. And we can yank that if you choose to.
I think you still get yourself in the same,
Yeah.
I mean, they can still come at you with an SIT regardless, so. And then you guys still have the ability to say, no, we're not gonna pay for it. It's ugly, I guess. Hopefully we can get through all of that with them without any of that ugliness.
Anything else? Well, we appreciate all your work. Thank you so much. Let's keep us posted for the second. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Okay, next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda, with the removal of the P card purchases for Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, Messy Roots, Nothing Burns as Bright as You, A Million Quiet Revolutions, Assassination Classroom, and Crumbs.
Can I have that whole thing reread?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of the P card purchases for, I believe they were to, the P card was to Amazon, but these are books.
Starting on page 2 of the P card. Okay,
It's Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, Messy Roots, Nothing Burns as Bright as You, A Million Quiet Revolutions, Assassination Classroom, and Crumbs.
I'll go ahead and second that. Did you get all of those? She's got the list.
No, I can wait. I can pick them up off the agenda, too, where you pointed out where they were. My only question is this P card has already been paid for, it's a P card. So pulling that back, I guess we send those back, basically is what we would do.
Okay, so why are we not approving the purchase of these books?
The content of these books is not something that I feel like should be in our high school library.
I'm not gonna disagree, but I mean, we're going through how many books in here. I haven't looked at a single one of these. I don't really feel comfortable voting yes or no on anything I haven't looked at.
I guess that's why we got them on the agenda and we had the opportunity to look at them, in my view.
I mean, I guess, back to what Julie said, what's the ramifications of not approving it?
Well, I guess here's the question, is how does our process and protocol go for purchasing library books? What is that process?
Use librarian, because that's what we're talking about. Librarian would make a request. That request would go into our system. The system then would approve it up through building administration. And then once that's approved by building administration, then it would be ordered probably through Victoria. Is that correct? Or do they order it at the school? I think the school orders them because they're the ones that have already said, once it's been approved, then it's ordered through. They get delivered and it goes on the P card, just like ordering something off of Amazon or Walmart or something.
Chris?
So I guess would the broader question be a discussion on whether these books, not so much that we paid for them, which I think, I understand the process now, but that we should talk about whether they should be in the library in the first place. So it's less, if I'm understanding, it's less about that we bought them, which I also understand, like, we probably shouldn't have bought them, but now that we have, should they? That's
Yes, and if we can return them, we should return them.
So is that a separate?
Well, to my understanding, I mean, we are the ones at the level to purchase it. We're not going to purchase them, then we're not going to have them. Because we still have to be the agreement to buy them in the first place.
There's a policy for challenges. I don't remember the numbers, in the 2000s, I believe. A challenge for anyone in the community who wants to challenge a library book. Any of our school libraries, there's a process for that, if that was the case for a member of the challenge.
But that would because we purchased it and we have.
That's correct. If the
We're at
purchase
the-
was never approved, then that probably be different.
So this would revoke the approval to purchase and require a return. I just.
Or the board is the final approver of all purchases. If you choose not to pay something, much like the SID that was discussed, then this is the group that holds the purse strings. And if there's a purchase that you don't want to be made, then it doesn't get made.
I do tend to agree with Dan on that. And maybe these ones just need to be revisited after we have time to, as a, individual trustees to research them.
And those purchases could be brought back to here if you guys all go through and look at things. Then sure, it could be brought back to the board if you choose to do that.
And
If I'm okay moving forward, approving the P card without these exceptions, bring these back later once we can all make an informed decision on this.
they've been pulled off.
If that's the case, then if they're pulled off, then because they're not approved purchases, they'll have to be pulled. If they're in there, I'm not sure what the status of these particular books are, or any of these books, if we've already received them or they've already been checked out 10 times, I have no idea. But I believe these were purchased on a 201, which would be high school. I have the list of those books that need to be pulled for consideration.
The motion on the table is to approve the consent agenda, however, removing those lists of books from the P card. Back, if I have two board members, which it sounds like I do, that want to bring them back.
I would second the motion put forward by, oh, did you already? Oh, sorry, I'm way behind.
You're good, you're good. Renee made the motion, I seconded it, we're under discussion.
So if this passes, we will be having a discussion on each of those books at some point.
I'm hearing now is just for these books.
Three.
Any comments, questions from the audience? Any other comments, questions from the trustees? Okay, so I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Renee, seconded by myself. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say nay. Motion carries.
I have to excuse myself for a little while.
Yes, please. That's fine. So 6:44. Moving on to next agenda item is action items. A, policy changes under the second reading. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve items 1 through 8, policy changes under action item A.
Motion approved by Dan, seconded by Chris K. Board? If none, comments, questions from the public audience? Okay, motion to approve by Dan, seconded by Chris. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carried. Action item B, the MOU clarification of half-hour leaves. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the MOU compensation for teachers acting, oh, whoops, sorry. MOU clarification of half-hour leave.
Second.
Approved by Renee, seconded by Jenny. Any questions, comments from the board? Audience? Okay, motion to approve by Renee, seconded by Jenny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Action item C, the MOU for compensation for teachers acting as substitutes during their preparation time. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the MOU for compensation for teachers acting as subs during prep time.
Bonnie?
My question is for our HR director. I'm not saying I disagree with this. I agree there's a huge need for this sort of thing, but I'm just wondering your interpretation of double dipping rules, how this applies.
So we had a pretty at-length conversation about this, and actually, I don't have an opinion about it one way or the other. I think that these people are giving up a lot of their time to do this for other teachers, and I know that sounds pretty weak, but I don't have an opinion one way or the other. Sorry.
Going through the School Board Association, it's not, there's a number of schools, around, well, dozens around the state that are doing it currently, including Yellowstone County schools, but it's really just trying to, it's not a lot, but it's a small reward for staff giving up their preparatory time, so it's an extra
It's like
assignment.
a bonus, if you will, an extra
Yeah,
stipend.
it's an extra assignment. It's an
Yeah.
assignment beyond their contracted date.
True, but it's still compensation for time that they're already being compensated for. And you can't forfeit your wage and hour rights. So that's my concern with the whole thing, and it has been for years, even with the schools that are doing this. So just want to voice that.
Yeah, I have the same concern as Donnie. I mean, this to me seems like you're being paid to work while you're already being paid to work. That's my first concern. My second isn't a concern. It's more of just a gripe, which is you sit through negotiations with the unions, and this prep time is like the one thing you cannot touch. It is sacred. Don't touch this prep time. But now we are. I mean, I would like some clarification on the double dipping. That to me seems concerning.
Behind you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Peggy.
So, sorry, oh, hey.
You're not.
So, I don't have to get very close, okay. So as far as the double dipping, the way that I understand it is teachers get a certain amount of prep time. I think it's 400 minutes a week or something like that. I can't remember the exact number, 200 minutes a week or something like that, whatever it is. If they're subbing in the class, they're giving up that prep time. So then they have to prep after their contractual time. That's what you're paying for, is they're still having to prep. All these teachers have to prep have to utilize that prep time. When they're helping out in the class, they're no longer able to do what they would normally be doing during that prep time because they're helping out another teacher due to whatever the reason is in the school and the students. So then at 3:55 and beyond, that's when they're having to do that work. So that's what you're paying for, is that 30, 45 minutes. For us, it's about 40 minutes from about 4 o'clock to 4:40. Or 6 o'clock to 6:40, whenever they decide to do that, because they're not able to do that during the day. So,
That's how you avoid the double dip.
Yeah, I just have a question, and maybe Andrew, but Justin probably could answer this. So when coaches leave to go coach like an away game and they are a teacher and they miss part of the school day, do they have to forfeit their coaching stipend because they would, or their teaching stipend because they would be double dipping? They wouldn't be doing that?
no.
They don't.
And I know a lot of those coaches that are teachers, they end up spending an awful lot of time before and after the school day prepping for the times that they're gone. And then afterwards, after the day, grading papers and so on and so forth that they can't do during the day while they're coaching would be my answer on that.
Ms. Hodges?
I just have a comment for during negotiations protecting. Yes, so we used to have 300 minutes a week, then we had 250, now we have 200. So we are trying to protect it, but we are doing it. Teachers are subbing now, and they're tired. They're not. You're not. It's not going to solve your subbing problem. You're still going to have, but it's going to sweeten their pot a little bit. I don't have the numbers, but Peggy had to come up with the numbers for us. Like, we have hours and hours and hours of unpaid filled jobs by our teaching staff.
About a third, Lori, about a third of our sub hours go unfilled by substitute teachers, and they have to be filled either by doubling up classrooms internally, pulling preps, or putting a bunch of kids in a study hall or something. It's about a third, almost exactly a third.
So, I mean, so they do want to protect. And so, like I said, it's not going to solve your subbing, because they're still, some teachers, I don't care, you could pay them maybe if you paid them $50 an hour, they would. But this $17 an hour isn't going to solve the problem, but it will make them feel a little bit more appreciated when they do volunteer to sub.
Jenny?
And we were sensitive to the cost of the district, so it sunsets this year. It's not for the 2-year, term of the negotiated agreement, so that we can then reassess what that meant to the district. So it sunsets on June 30th, 24.
It's not actually costing the district anything, right? Because this is, if we were able to find the sub, we'd be paying anyway.
Correct.
Well, that's the argument.
Yeah.
How does this work? Is this per day, or they sign up to do this for a period of, how does this get
Right.
paid? I guess, how are we tracking this? How are we getting?
And I'll let Peggy talk to the tracking, but I did say it has to be trackable, hence one of the changes that the HR proposed during the whole process of looking at the MOU is it's done in 15-minute increments, and it'll be done via timesheets.
Correct. So we will have the first 15 minutes. So if they do it for 10, they get paid for 15. And then after that 15 minutes, it'll be actual time. They will have to fill out a time sheet. We felt like that was the easiest way for payroll to administer that. They would fill out the time sheet. It would have to be signed off by their principal, so that we weren't getting these random time sheets. And we felt like that was the easiest way for not only payroll, but also the educators and the principals to track it.
I like the idea, even though it's going to probably cost us more. I know it will, because teachers have been volunteering in the past and now they're going to be getting paid for it. But I like the idea of the consistency that it provides to our students, in that they're already adults in our culture and they understand our systems, they understand our students, and they're the ones filling in, and it's not going to be necessarily a stranger from the outside coming in.
It's not a perfect solution, but it's something, and I think that's what we're shooting for, is just to do what we can for our own staff, but for our own kids.
Comments, questions from public staff, audience? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
So the only comment I have is that this does expire at the end of the year, so we'll get to see a couple of things. Is it successful? I mean, do we really have that many teachers willing to give up their prep time to get paid $17? I don't know if that's going to be successful. And the other thing is, what is the ramifications to the cost of the district? So we'll be able to see that, and then we can revisit whether this is viable. We are doing things in HR to ensure that we get these substitutes that apply to the district turned around much quicker. We do the orientation every 2 weeks. We are hiring we are interviewing as soon as we have applicants, instead of waiting until, we have several, we just do them right then and there. So we are trying to do things that will speed up this process so we can get more substitutes in the district.
Discussion, comments from board members or public audience? I have a motion to be approved by Jenny, seconded by Chris with a K. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Action item D, updated job description. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the updated nurse job description.
Comments, questions from the board?
Were there any major changes from the existing job description? Since it wasn't, the old description wasn't included.
You know what? I never even thought about it. We went to leadership and learning.
There wasn't one. There was not a nurse job description before, so this is new.
How about we hired our nurses like a year ago? We didn't have a job description when we hired them?
Yeah, we have this one, but it was never approved by the board.
Oh, okay. So there wasn't an old one.
Which was this one, yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Peggy. Any other comments, questions from the board? Comments, questions from public audience? Okay, updated job description motion to approve by Dan, seconded by myself. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Action item E, superintendent added to bank account. Before I have a motion, I'm just going to throw it out there. I had already had made, would like to know what a list of that would be.
That's, you know that.
I'm sorry, did I? Oh, I apologize. E, superintendent added to bank account. Apologize. Do I have a motion?
I move to add superintendent to the bank.
Chris? Second. Donnie?
I can't remember how the past practice has been. Is this just something that we didn't do when you came on board? Did you?
No, we didn't do it. It really isn't, it's not a major necessity. Julie will be gone for a few weeks, so we're doing it as a case we run into a problem.
So if we haven't done it in the past, are we sure that superintendent being on the bank account is a good thing? I mean, I know there's a lot of times where it's just.
There's always two.
Right, but superintendents typically are not signers on bank accounts. They're the administrators. What was past practice? I can't remember who the third signature was. It was always the superintendent, obviously.
I just haven't had time. I have signed in other districts, I've been a signer, but I'm not in this current district.
I don't know the past, to be honest with you. I mean,
I can assure you that I have no intention of embezzling money or going to Vegas or anything like that.
To approve by Chris, seconded by Donnie. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Action item F, Education Associates Job Ready / Life Ready curriculum. Do I have a motion? Any discussion? Christina, I thought I saw you here. Do we want a little tidbit of information? Why don't you just come on down? The price is right. Will you just kind of give us a little bit of information on this coming up, how it came up, and it looks like it's did come to Leadership and Learning, if I understand. And do I also understand that the cost has been funded by a grant?
Yes. So it's a supplementary resource. Currently, what we have in the pre-ETS program is really limited.
Could you
mainly
tell them what
for-
the pre-ETS program is?
So it's it's job employment skills, employment ability. So it's through DPHS, and basically students they can either be on a 504 or an IEP, and it's a program to help them with job skills, employability, everything that you need to be out successful in retrieving a job and obtaining a job. And it's at the very infancy stages right now. Last year, I think we had 4 kids. This year, we have about 20. And so we're trying to grow the program. The current curriculum is kind of like at a like a 4th grade level. So it's not really appropriate for all students. And so this one that we're looking at is very leveled. So it could be used for students in life skills, and it could also be used for like our 504 students that are just receiving accommodations and very minimal support services.
Supplements, there's
Yes.
not
It's a
hiring a
supplementary.
teacher, this isn't a whole new class.
No, we already have the class and a teacher that has those block periods.
Is it a one-time cost or do we have to purchase it every year?
It's a one-time cost. Unless we just, so the program has different kits. Right now, we purchased the job prep and employment ability is what we would like to get. And then the teacher wanted the advanced series so that we could have a little more options to level the students at where they're at. So, and it comes with everything. It uses all modalities. So it's covers behavior through everything, communication, socialization. It's really well-rounded. And it's not new, and it's been around for a little bit, but it's one of those ones that like you can buy kits. And so our students would be able to learn about construction trades, food technology, law enforcement, medical records careers, small engine repair, and everything has like a hands-on component. So it's not just like videos and regular lesson plans, but you actually get the kits and work hands-on through everything.
Can you reuse the kits for next year's
Yes.
students?
Yes.
Have a motion?
Motion to approve the purchase of the Job Ready Life curriculum funded by state grant.
I'll second.
Audience? Thank you. Okay, with nothing, motion to approve by Dan, seconded by Jenny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, G. Oh, phew. Action item G, pay incoming bills. So before I have a motion, because we only have one board meeting this month, it's going to stretch out some of those bills, but we have some ones that we feel that are coming up, but we couldn't get the list. But I know there is no list on that recommendation, and it's just very vague. So I did ask Julie to kind of give whoever wants to make that motion what that list would be. And anything that comes in, other things that would come in, we'll just have to wait until our next board meeting.
Are there any items that are over the amount normally that we would approve?
Well, there's basically only two that we, mainly technical service, Mountain Alarm. I do know Mountain Alarm comes in usually about $1,100 in.
It is something you guys normally approve and then we pay, but because they like to get paid on a certain rotation, we'd have to wait an extra 2-3 weeks. And some of them get a little antsy, but you'd just be giving permission to pay those 2 bills, which we know are coming. Some of the others, honestly, if they wait a few weeks, they're fine. Yeah. But we would like permission to pay those 2 bills, just because.
Whoever wants to make the motion. That way, you don't want to, it's just something that.
Motion to approve paying the bills to MTS and the other one? Mountain Alarm in the interim while we don't have a board meeting.
By Christopher Kay. Any other comments, questions on that, Dan?
Is there a chance there'll be any other bills besides those 2 that you're going to need to get paid?
There really will be some, but honestly, they can wait, I think. I mean, we might get an electrical bill. Well, they're fine. Everyone will survive.
Would it perhaps be helpful if we modified the motion to pay recurring bills? Would that fit those 2 as well as possibly some others?
I recall in our policy somewhere, there is some policy that says we can pay utilities, recurring bills in between meetings if there's a law.
I think we can leave it to those 2. We can already pay the recurring. We'll be safe.
Comments, questions on that? Any other comments, questions from public audience? Okay, if not, I have a motion to approve by Renee, seconded by Chris. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All righty, moving into our informational items. We have our student board representatives report. I know that they have been eager to provide us some information. So ladies.
To clarify, we'll be looking off our computers, but we're not. I don't want to be disrespectful.
You're good.
And then all of the information that we have is from our interviews with kindergarten through 8th grade.
Okay.
All right, we were able to meet with Southwest and Graph, and we met with all of the classes and all the students, and that was really great. We are continuing our progress in the middle school, but what we did with this process is when we met the kids, we asked them 4 questions. The first was, what is your favorite thing about school? The second was, what is your least favorite thing about school? And then the third was if they feel supported by the staff at their school. And the last one was just if they had any questions for Caitlin or myself.
And we got a variety of answers from each school. The answers from South were really silly, and I think the next time we go, we might adjust the wording so they can understand a bit better. It kept us on our toes this time around. But it's very clear that the students love their teachers and enjoy being at the school, and it seems like they're grasping the learning, even though they might not like it all of the time. But they're understanding it and working through it in a positive way.
And then the answers from West were expressed some concerns about their struggle of just not understanding math or English, but they really enjoy their teachers, the schedule they follow, and their specials. And then we found that Super Kids is super loved by everyone in that school, which was really great. And then they were very involved and excited to speak with us, and so we were really excited to be there with them. And overall at that school, the environment is really positive and fun for all of the students.
From Graph, we received some more mature answers, and many of the 4th graders were concerned about being able to solve problems with their friends and seeking new solutions on how to independently solve their problems. We did get a lot of positivity from all of the elementary grades with the ideas that were presented from Jeff Feely, the motivational speaker that we had. Most of the students had a positive takeaway from that presentation, which is a good thing. But with the information that we received and after we were able to meet with Mrs. Peterson, we are looking for new ways to communicate with the students and understand a way for honest answers without them answering along with the answers that their peers gave, so copying off of each other. And then there were some concerns from the staff, and we'll be discussing those with Mrs. Peterson as well. The next time we go to Graph, we'll be using papers for the students to write their answers on rather than group discussion. And then we also plan to meet with Mrs. Peterson again to better understand the ways that students are taught to problem solve with their friends and how the situations are looked at or handled on the administrative side. But overall, the students are liking their specialists like PE, music, or library. And then we had several answers from students who love everything about their school and tons of good comments about their teachers. For the things that students didn't necessarily enjoy, they're just because they're finding them boring or they're struggling to fully understand their math or reading problems.
And then at the middle school, we actually had 2 different trips for interviews and then spoke to 10 students for both of those trips, ranging from all grades. Then the first time we met in a conference setting with 5th and 6th graders present, as well as Mr. Klebe. And then the second time it was students from the 7th and 8th grade. And then the second time we gave the students a paper to write their answers for more honest answers, which really worked. And then we also added the question, how do you feel about the options offered at your school, including activities and classes? And many students did state that they would appreciate a larger range of options for clubs offered. And then this was the biggest reform of recommendation given. Aside from this, the students also stated they were struggling with math and would appreciate extra help. And those 2 were the only dominant topics given to us by the students. And we look forward to working through these issues with the administration as well. And we're very excited to continue collaborating with those group of kids.
And then lastly, to work on a solution for the struggle of these students not understanding their school topics, we presented the idea to the principals at the schools of having high school students who are in good standing and willing to go to the elementary schools to help tutor the students. This can help provide the students with a different perspective on the topics or one-on-one time and slower pace to understanding their work. And we're just waiting on the best way to go about this plan, the proper group to do it, and the place to start. But we're excited to see where it goes and how this will work for our district.
Good. Girls have been busy.
Yeah. And then also we hosted our home meet on Saturday, and it was a very big success. We took first in just about everything. So.
Good. Okay. Any comments, questions from the board? Well, I know that we do appreciate that. It's nice to kind of get to the lower levels, and I'm sure the admin, it's nice to probably hear from you guys too, just so that collaboration on such. So thank you. Any other comments from public comment on that? Perfect. Thank you very much, ladies. Going through our department reports, as always, I will go through if there's any comments. You as administrators, if there's anything that you want us to touch upon, or you're really wanting us to kind of reiterate something, we would love to hear from you. So I will go through those. Going into activities. Curriculum report. Yes, ma'am. Come on up. I think I have something. I have to pull it up though, because I have like a million tabs open.
I just wanted to showcase a couple of things that were in my board report. Under professional development, I indicated that we had some celebrations from our instructional coaches. So Katie Thompson and Jamie Bennington both collaborated in writing these 2 books, which is, I think, pretty impressive. I've never written a book before. So these are published resources that our consulting company Strive uses, and these books and resources are being used across the state with other school districts that are part of the literacy grant work, as well as schools in other states. I know that Strive also does consulting in Colorado and Wyoming, and one of the Dakotas, I think, I don't remember which one, but these are books and resources that are getting into the hands of other schools, other instructional coaches, other schools trying to do this work around disciplinary literacy. And this is just really impressive to me, to be able to have your name on a resource that says, I collaborated and I contributed to building this document. So I brought them tonight, so I'll have them available after the board meeting if anybody wants to look at them. Katie Thompson, our elementary coach, helped write the coaching handbook, Strive's coaching handbook, which is basically a tool for new coaches to use to help them craft their work. And then Jamie Bennington helped write this one that is just called Literacy, which is the acronym that stands for Learning Through Intentional, Targeted, Engaging Routines and Strategies to access all content and yield results. So it's really more for the secondary level around accessing content and best practices for instruction in all content areas. So there's resources and documents in here for welding. I was just looking at one for welding classes. So, and to also help teams become highly effective teams. So I really wanted to just showcase their work. This is amazing that they've had this opportunity to collaborate on writing these 2 resources and books. The other thing that I wanted to just touch on was item number 4 under our MCL SDP work, our literacy grant work. One piece that I really wanted to just point out is the dashboard that we're developing, that centralized resource hub for educators to not have to sift through, piles and piles of Google Docs and folders to try to get to information. It's intended to try to just kind of centralize that information, and kind of like your automobile dashboard, like if I go here, I know that this is the information I'm going to get. So it's kind of like your blinkers and your lights and things like that. The goal around all of this work, I just want to really strongly reiterate, this is not just simply to learn new strategies, but we are really trying and working hard to create conditions for job-embedded learning. We know that if the work is embedded into our day-to-day, it becomes stronger, it becomes more automatic, and it's more valuable than just a one-and-done professional development. So we're really trying to create those conditions around job-embedded learning for continuous improvement so that Laurel Public Schools can be the school of choice around the state. So were there other questions or something else?
You already hit, so.
Oh, okay.
Chris?
Yeah.
The gifted and talented testing
Yes.
you did, I think you identified 13 new students.
Correct.
How many total students were tested?
So we tested all students in 3rd grade, so I don't remember exactly how many students are in 3rd grade. I think there's 117 roughly, so we would have screened all of those students, and then we looked at FastBridge data for new students to the district in grades 4 and up. 4th through 8th grade. We typically don't do screening on our high school students because once they get into high school, they have the opportunity to go into a more specialized track of learning. So we just kind of focus on that 4th through 8th grade new to district students, and we kind of flip the way that we screen those kids. We do look at their benchmark data first, and then look at those kids who have very high scoring on that benchmark data, and then we do the screening for those students. We also did have a couple of parent requests that happened where parents were talking to teachers, and then the teachers reached out to our testing team and asked for those students to be tested. So all in all, I would say probably about 130 students were screened across grades 3 and up. So we have noticed, since my department took back the testing in the last 3 years, we have noticed that we've done a lot of retesting of 4th grade and 5th grade students, whether that was from a parent request or a teacher request, or just, can you look at the data again? And we have done some rescreening of students in 4th and 5th grade. That then after that maturity happens, that then their screening did come out different. So we have had some internal conversations just in my department that will then come to Mr. Torix for deeper discussion around possibly moving up our full grade level screening from 3rd grade up to 4th grade. But those are just things that we're kind of toying around with right at the moment. We haven't made any decisions at all. Currently right now, our practices are that we screen all 3rd grade students. and then new to District 4 through 8. Okay, thank you. Thanks for letting me share.
Yes, out, and please let those ladies know that's pretty impressive. Yeah. Yeah. And then Julie, I had Chris coming in at 7:17. Did you? Okay, perfect. Chris, we are under department reports and we are moving through. So now we will be on to facilities. Is Wayne here? I just had a question, and maybe you know.
I might.
The tin roofing above the emergency exit on the east side of the high school was damaged by students walking on them?
What we think, do you guys know what we're talking about? You should go out the east exits of those gyms, not really use their emergency exits. There's kind of some fins. The roof come down, and there were some fins, then the kids would climb up there. So we removed all those fins there. And there were some kids up there, and basically that tin isn't meant to hold weight of high school kids. And I don't think we know who. If we did, obviously we'd have a vandalism charges here. But we just had to replace some of that tin, and we took down what they were using to climb up, which was some old decorative, I don't know what you call them. You see it on we have a bunch on the south side of the high school. If you look, it kind of comes down. It's decorative. We took all that off.
Sorry. Oh, that's interesting.
Oh yeah,
Donnie?
it's frustrating.
It's nothing new. I think it's just kind of a tradition now, maybe.
Well, we did take off the easy route up, like almost like a ladder. Took that off. If we catch it, I would like something done. They know that if we have high school kids on there, that's just not right. We don't do damage to schools. There's no reason for that, because every dollar you put into that pulls it out of some other pocket in the school, and that just hurts everybody. So we don't need to damage and cause vandalism.
Double checking. Okay, moving on. Anything else on facilities? Okay, food services. Technology. Transportation. Buses are running around decorated.
Great in the parade.
Moving into financial reports. Moving through number 1, explanation of negative balances. Yes, Dan?
Does item 1 have to do with item 2, or are they unrelated? Are they together?
1 and 2 on financial reports.
So does the negative balances relate to the letters from OPI, or those two separate? Okay. So basically my understanding is the negative balances is something not to worry about because we just haven't been paid some stuff we're owed. And that's item 1. Item 2 is a separate
Right.
issue, which we're not.
Right, and I know last year, I was questioned on this time of the year, it seems like we do run into the negative right before the taxes come in, your property taxes. And so, and I didn't have the bank statement done for November. I do now, as of today, have it done, so it's back out of the red, both general accounts. So I just, I didn't want somebody to be alarmed and, oh my gosh, we got a negative $500 some thousand. No, the second issue is completely different.
Number 2.
Might as well just have a discussion on this one, I guess.
Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, so I got a call from OPI a week and a half ago, and they said that we went over budget on the general accounts, and then
Last year.
Yeah, from last year, 22-23 fiscal year, went over budget, which we did technically. What happened is we had an excess funds in the general account from the encumbrances the last 2 years I've been fighting through, finally got them cleaned up. Well, then it showed that we had all this excess money. Well, when you go in and you do your actual budget, you get done with the TFS and the budget, you start the budget, well, then you have all this excess money. So the idea of having the multi-district fund is to move excess money over to the multi-district, which, if you remember right, and I did have a summary of what the transfers I made at the budget meeting and in August. The summary stated why those funds got moved and how much got moved. So in moving those funds, though, it's classified as an expenditure, unfortunately, and so the ICE says, well, we went over our allowed amount. They said, well, if you would have passed a resolution, and stating that you're going to do that, we probably would have been okay. Well, we didn't pass a resolution. I did look up some laws, and it, to me, they're kind of back and forth. They talk about budget resolution, but then, or budget amendment, and then they talk about you have to hold a public notice hearing. Well, we kind of did. I mean, we had a budget meeting that it was public noticed. So I don't know how you guys view that, but the problem is now they're saying, oh, we did everything wrong. I mean, the transfer was correct. I mean, that's perfect legitimate thing to do, so that transfer. What's not correct is that we didn't do a budget amendment or resolution, is what they're saying. And then we talked to the auditor, and he was gonna try to put them on hold, for a while, pulling back our GTB, and the auditor, and they told the auditor no, they were moving forward because a budget amendment wasn't done by June 30th of 2023, and I'm like, there's no way I would even known that till I did the trustees financial summary and started in on the budget, that there was that money to move. So anyway, I still need to write a letter back. We need to write a letter back to OPI. They want a letter back in 30 days, but they plan on going forward with pulling the GTB.
So really what they're telling us we have to do is pull that money back out of the multi-district and use it. And they're going to withhold the equivalent of out of our taxes, and we have to use the money that we transferred to multi-district. We did not go over budget. I mean, we spent the money we had. But they don't like the transfer without this budget amendment. Now they're saying you got to pull that money back out, use that, or you can just spend $400,000 less and not pull the money back out. That's up to us. And then they would withhold it over a number of payments, correct? Isn't that?
Well, GTB comes in 2 payments, comes in December, and
they would hold it over this.
Comes in May, so they'll split it between the December.
Then if we choose at the end of the year to pull money out of the multi-district to cover that money that we already put in there, then we can pull that money back out and use it to cover, is what we're able to do if we want to or have to. I personally, after reading everything I've been able to read and what Julie's given me, I can't find anything that says that there's a date on it that it's supposed to be June 30th. To Julie's comment, I said, is there any way we would know on June 30th? She says, well, it'd have to be at the June board meeting, and we wouldn't know. And again, we're still in the midst of arguing a little bit. I'm just not sure what we can do to appeal, but we've asked questions and they've not answered them yet.
So I guess my question is, how do they clock a movement from the elementary fund to the multi-district as an expense? What justification do they have for calling that an expense?
That's the way it is in the TFS. It's a transfer to other funds, and it shows up as an expense in your trustee's financial summary. It's the only way you can.
Mayfair's.
Yeah, it's their program that you put your trustee's financial summary into, and it shows as that transfer to other funds is booked as an expense in their system. And maybe Donnie's got some more insight to that.
At least to us, we can't see anything that says we have to do that.
I'm probably gonna put in a call to Barb Quinn as trustee.
So I understand properly, like, what this amounts to is next year's budget shortchanged by this
This
443. This year's budget
This
shortchanged
year's.
by this.
Well, what they're saying
we
is
had-
they're shortchanging us and we're going to have to pull the money back out
Right.
potentially out of the multi-district, which we just put it in 3-4 months ago.
Right.
We pull it back out and
They're gonna short our elementary funding next year as a result.
this year,
This year, that's what I mean, yeah, sorry.
and a little bit of high school.
little bit of
80
high
some thousand in the high school, 304 or whatever it is in the elementary.
Almost 200,000 in the elementary side and almost like 90,000 in the high school.
About 300 grand total.
It's the multi.
That we finally got
yeah,
some money back.
Yeah, as
Right,
we
we finally got money
try to
back.
put that little money in the multi-district for things
Yeah.
like math curriculum purchases. You know, you always got to build that up because you might have to replace a major something like the field or something in 10 years. So you always want to be working that up just a little bit, even if it's just a few dollars, it's something. Because we have those long-term expenditures, boilers, things like that.
Donnie,
My question's for Julie. Have you heard back from OPI when you provided them with all that information on the board giving you approval to make transfers and you reported back the summary? Did they respond to that?
I haven't done that yet. I haven't even sent that stuff because I was waiting for our discussion tonight. I have a letter ready to go to OPI tomorrow, along with those documents that I sent to you.
But if you know someone, there's no ill conceived plan by this board to try to do anything wrong. It did everything we were probably supposed to. We're not sure what's going on.
We all know the OPI has a lot of new people too, so they might have an error in their ways. We'll just.
But Barb Twinn's name's on the letter, so if you
So how do we prevent this moving forward? Just have this official resolution? But if they're asking for it before we would know, how would we do that? Like
there
make
lies
it
the
up?
question.
I think that's probably a question to answer after we resolve this. You know, it'll,
I did email OPI, the gal that, that I was in communication with over this, and asked her if they're, to send me a state law that says June 30th. And she's never responded to me. I have looked up all the laws that regarding any kind of transfers. There's your Montana Code annotated 20-9208. There's your ARM rule 1010-320. There's even our own policy, for transferring, So it's like, there's nothing that says June 30th. I'm having a problem with that.
Julie, that was autumn that you had those initial, okay.
if there's something we're not understanding, we just like to understand it.
Well, and since with us
If
having
it's us,
questions,
then it's us. But we still don't understand how we were supposed to do this by June 30th.
keeping you guys abreast of what's going on. Okay? Okay. Moving through financial reports, we have the Building Reserve Fund. Budget account summary. Cash report. Revenue report. Expenditure report. High school activities for October and November. Middle school activities. Bond summary report. Oh, sorry. Go. Middle school report. Am I moving up one or am I going back to bond?
Bond.
Okay, yep.
Just a clarification, are those items that are on that summary the month of November only, or is that year to date?
Says as of 11/30.
Yeah.
I was guessing, yeah, that's total.
Through year to date. Mm-hmm.
That's all I was gonna comment on too was, you're just gonna keep running this up as a tally. So it'll keep, so that bottom number will reflect our total bond expenditure. Yeah. Does anybody else find this helpful? I thought this, I really like seeing this broken out. This is as detailed as I think it needs to be at the board level. That's great. Thank you for doing that.
History of voted levies. Julie?
I just wanted to put that in there in the same way with the building reserve fund presentation. Just start letting you guys think about what levies we need to go after next year. Because we're going to have to make this decision in January and February for sure. We're going to have the final decision on whether we're even do levies. You know, that's the big thing. I know we talked about the building reserve levies for sure. And we need to probably look at maybe something in the general fund for operating levies, because it's getting very tricky.
It's tough not to have an operating levy for 16, 17, 18 years. We will have two plans to come forward, one with a levy, one without a levy. So everyone understands if you vote, if the board chooses to run a levy, here's what will happen with a voted levy, here's what happens without a voted levy. That's our goal. So very transparent, no, I don't believe in idle threats, well, we're gonna cut the football program if we don't get this levy, and then I figure out a way not to cut the football program. That makes no sense. So we'd like to, so don't anyone say I'm cutting the football program. But the whole point is that if we make it very clear to everybody, with a voted levy of, the 300,000 or 200,000, whatever it is, this allows us to do this and keep this staff member or whatever. If we don't, and we need to be able to tell people, because I know we don't run levies until May. Well, we need to be able to have that out there so people understand what's the possibilities here.
I think it's important to save this page 1 if we do decide to run a levy to use as marketing. I mean, it's important to note we have not passed a levy in 17 years. And prior to that, we had a 20-year run where we ran one almost every year and passed one almost every time we ran it.
And I think it's pennies, right? I mean, on a $300,000 raise, it's pennies per year per 100.
Not month, it's just,
Yeah.
it turns out to be a few dollars a year as opposed to.
Which I think is nice. Less to the taxpayer than we had originally anticipated. So between that savings and what we've done, I mean, now the building levy would be the same thing, right? Because that's done this year.
Building reserve.
Building
Reserve
right.
is something we can permissibly levy a sum, but I mean, that's what we used for, we're buying a boiler, fixing bleachers at the high school. We'd like to look at that, redoing a floor, something like that. That's building reserve, classroom floors and lights and, all the problems with the heating system, leaks that we spring, that all comes out of building reserve.
And that's, I think, what we need to communicate is that, yes, we're getting two new elementary buildings. In essence, West is going to be mechanically brand new, but we still have we'll have two district buildings, really three, probably with the admin building moving to South. We'll have 3 buildings that still have maintenance issues and things that need to be taken care of. So I think we still need to make sure that word, if we do go out to do this, that they know that, we acknowledge that the elementary district's in great shape after the bond. However, the middle school and elementary and South will all.
We're already starting to replace boilers at the middle school since it's been about 20 years. We have one that's non-functional, 3 that are non-repairable, meaning they don't have repair parts for them. So we need to start looking at those things. I would like Julie, and we've talked about her putting together all the types of things that we spend the building reserve on, so people know that these are the things that we spend all that money on over the years.
That's what I did with the building reserve fund presentation. It's in there.
When we run a levy like this, does it has to be by elementary versus high school?
Correct.
Is the majority of where the money is going to be needed at the high school? Well, obviously we can use it everywhere. I really do feel like we have a strong place to stand to ask for a levy for the high school in saying that this is what we needed and it didn't pass, and now this is what we're asking for instead. It's pennies on what we wanted, but can we get this passed?
I mean, we're talking 6 digits instead of 31 million. It would be, 3 or 4, 2 or 3, 400,000, which would be over the life of it would be $1 or $2 a year as opposed to $1 or $2 a month.
Yeah, so this will be in the agenda for January as a motion then, probably, or as an action item potentially?
We have dates we have to meet, but discuss it in January.
It's like February 27th is the final date when we'll have to have our language for the.
Just a question for the principals, because I noticed in there, which I think is great feedback about study hall and STEAM. Could we talk a little bit about that? It seems like the students are not real keen on STEAM. I mean, if I was going to take a poll, I think they all really don't like it. I wondered, what do we do with that time, or is there anything that you guys have talked about to do? Yeah, also that.
Okay, awesome. So currently, study hall is in our school day as a non-credited class with the idea students would have time to do their homework during the day. We all know teaching and learning has shifted over the years since study hall started to be offered at the high school level. So it's something our staff is taking a look at in addition to our student feedback on what we may or may not do with that for next year. With the reality of we're looking at 30 to 50 students per period on if we collapse study hall, where do those students go during the day, and making sure enough other classes are offered and there's enough seats throughout the rest of our courses to allow for that. As far as STEAM, it was initially put into place a number of years ago for enrichment and intervention. It's shifted a lot for a variety of reasons, time of day, purpose, how it's being used. Right now, it is not being used super efficiently for a variety of reasons, in part because it's at the end of the day. So we're also looking at that, when it would be more effective and efficient for our students to have some benefits from it, to get those interventions and enrichments, and depending on how they're responding to learning in their classes throughout the school day. So definitely taking the student feedback into consideration. Staff has a lot of great feedback as well, and then determining how to move forward in our master schedule with that for next year.
I haven't taken a study hall since freshman year because I like the GPA boost from my honors classes. And then STEAM, I feel like I'm not really productive in STEAM at the end of the day because I usually just use it for meetings. But if it was at the beginning of the day, then all of my morning meetings could be extended so that I would have more time to meet, I guess. I don't know. At the end of the day, it's kind of like we have committee meetings for student council and we're missing a lot of our seniors because of school work. So it's kind of just an inconvenience that way. And last year I never went to STEAM because I was exempt from it. So I don't know.
And then I also haven't taken a study hall since freshman year, but I've noticed that a lot of our students have been using it to work on their schoolwork, which is really great. The difference from that and STEAM is that I believe that I've heard this a lot from a lot of different grades, that when people were exempt or were able to leave STEAM when they didn't have missing assignments or other projects, that STEAM was much more effective that way, because then you got a benefit from being there or a benefit from doing your work and then not being there. So I'm not sure if this was a conversation before, but that's, I think, something to look at.
Does missing that time affect hours? Yeah, so that, I think that's
part
why.
of what Mr. Stilson and I have also started to dig into a little bit more this year, to make sure we're getting the 1,080 hours in for all of our students, and what the impact may or may not be if a number of our students are leave because they're incentivized. So right now we're pulling it back in and not incentivizing STEAM because of the potential risks with accreditation.
At that point, I kind of feel like if with the affected hours, I feel like it would be easier to either have it at the beginning of the day, because then you have all of the students there and you still have that like advisory time, or essentially lengthening our classes so that we are required to be there for the amount of time that we need to like have legally, but we're not like having frustrated kids and then not being productive.
It kind of resonates with me when they're talking about morning versus afternoon. I know for me, by the end of the day, I'm ready to drop my pack and I would probably just sit there and count dots on the ceiling, right? But because I like to do stuff like that, I also didn't like homework or there's other things to do in the evening. So having something like that in the morning would allow me to procrastinate and then still get my studying done and my assignments done in the morning before it would be like allotted time to cover my procrastination, right? I mean,
That's good.
I'm saying I agree. I like what they wrote.
Well, definitely looking at potential solutions for next year and taking in the accreditation pieces with making sure we're getting our teachers enough minutes per plan, and finding a way to also prioritize our collaborative learning team time and how all of that comes together in the greater picture.
If there is something that we could even do second semester, I suppose you guys wouldn't be against it. We just.
Well, and that's something we definitely spent a lot of time talking about. We actually just talked about it again this morning on the realities of trying to do a shift like that going into second semester are drastic because of shared staff. We'd have to find a way to absorb over 100 seniors who are currently out for school to work, and what does that look like for the coverage for STEAM in the morning, doing the backside of Infinite Campus for all the adjustments in time of day and scheduling and stuff. So not against it. I feel like to do it well, we need to be pretty darn intentional and have like what this looks like, and working with our intervention team as well on what does the intervention team look like? How can we build that into the day and monitor it? Thankfully, Mr. Stilson has now been coached up in RTI at work, so we have some of the same context to build from, working with the curriculum and instruction department as well on making sure we're remembering all those key pieces for interventions and collaborative learning within our professional learning communities.
Thanks for bringing the speaker in on resilience. I think that there's not enough attention put on the other side of bullying to allow those kids who are being bullied to grow and to, get some strategies, I guess, on how to deal with that. Because they'll deal with it their whole
That was
life.
done through community ed with Mrs. Stamper. It's been fun to bring in. I actually needed to be out the day of the presentation itself, but when students have been in the office for a variety of reasons of like, what stood out in that presentation? How could we respond based on what you learned during that day? And how can we use that in our interactions with others? Mm-hmm.
Going through your academic behavior, let anybody know like location, how many incidents, how many events, participants, large in both the fifth and the sixth or eighth in this class. We don't like, what's standard, typical,
So I look kind of at, because I've been kind of keeping track of it as well, and so I was looking at like past years. We're a little bit above what we had in previous years. However, we're pretty much coinciding with kind of what you see at the high school. If you look at their numbers and ours, very similar. We do have a lot of in the classroom, but a lot at the recess time and the playground time, which it's hard to have that super long recess of 25 minutes or more with middle schoolers and keeping our hands to ourselves. So that's kind of what I'm basically seeing with behavior. It's a little bit of both. So we go through our steps in our handbook, and so the PLP logs are used for all of the classroom disruptions up until the fourth offense. The fourth offense, they get 1 hour detention. Fifth offense, they get a 2 hour detention, and then we start down that behavioral. So if it's a classroom disruption, that's what we go there. If it's a physical altercation that occurred within the hallway or in the classroom, those we handle separately within our handbook. So if it's a physical assault, you have in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, depending on where you're at. If there's any bully harassment issues, then those are handled as well. And those could be happening in the classroom as well as out in the hallway. And those are looked at and investigated thoroughly. And those are given also the appropriate consequences, which would be the first offense is 1 day of out-of-school suspension, or we could do in-school suspension. Second offense is 1 to 3 days, and then you're up to 3 to 5 days. Just so you know that I've been trying to dabble in what we call from the RTI conference in Solution Tree with the RTI conferences that we've been going to. Jessica Hannigan and her husband John, they're well-renowned researchers and authors. And so we've been working a lot with Behavioral Academy's restorative practice. And so lunch detention isn't where they're sitting and doing nothing anymore. They might have to write an apology letter, or they have to come to terms. So we're trying to use more of restorative justice. You're welcome.
Thank you very much for working with the other. You're busy and you can be overloaded. Moving through committee meetings. November 2nd.
Since we're just finishing committee meetings, I've still got capital planning on for this Thursday. Are we doing that?
I will have to look, and I can while we're sitting here, and see if there's anything on the agenda. That's the one that's kind of getting put by the wayside because everything's.
A lot of capital planning discussions lately take place here. So
Yeah,
if
they
there's
do,
nothing to
and-
discuss, please let us know.
I'll email her tomorrow or right now and make sure that there's nothing on it. We'll cancel it. I'll look. I'm looking right now. Right now, there's no agenda items on it right now. One at West and one at middle school. temporarily, well, not temporarily, we moved, we had an internal candidate to move from south to west. We already had a student teacher who's incredibly capable at South, and we gave her a new supervisor. Casey Wilmot is our instructional coach for special ed. So she will base herself out of there a few hours a week and monitor her and still be able to finish her other duties, most of her other duties. And she'll help out at the middle school a little bit to cover as well. So granted, there's a special ed student teacher, but she's at a very high level and is doing a very good job. It won't be solo, but she'll still need a lot of assistance, but it's not turning it over to a sub or someone who's never, worked with special ed kids. She's very intelligent and highly capable.
I'd like to piggyback off of Chris's too, because I brought this up here before, and I still get really concerned about our special ed program, because it seems like the attrition on it is just so high. And I'm not in this industry, so I don't know how to benchmark that, what are other districts doing that we're not doing? Or, what is it that's makes it so it's like holding sand in your hand? Cannot hold on to any special ed aides, teachers, anything that's related to that field. It's just really concerning to me that continues to happen. And what structural changes do we need to put in place to help slow that attrition a little?
One of the structural changes that I feel very strongly about is making sure we did have that part-time coach that really is delving into special ed. And I think we have someone who's really good in there. The problem is keeping them in that coaching position and not having them have to fill in everybody else. I'm very worried about that with any of our coaches, having them have to go into a classroom. Again, that's great, and some of them, they're doing some of that right now. But it also takes away from new teachers and retaining teachers. It's a double-edged sword. I'll go ahead and let Christina talk a little bit.
Well, it's not a surprise. Special education is a very, very hard field to go into. Just like MSUB, they only have 6 graduates coming out of special education, which all of them probably had 4 or 5 job offers. It's a lot of work. It's hours and hours of paperwork. It's assessing students and progress monitoring on top of already what they're doing during the day. They have one prep like everybody else, but we're asking them to make sure that they lesson plan, fit in assessments, fit in parent meetings, they're a secretary too. They call parents, they do interviews with parents, they fill out all of the paperwork. It's just a lot of work. And there's a lot of behaviors. Most of our behaviors are students on IEPs, which is so. A lot of times their disability impacts how they learn at school and how they behave at school. And it is very draining for most of our special education staff. And that's why a lot of people aren't going into it really at the rate that they used to go into special education. Yeah.
I guess my question on this then would be, the people that are not staying here in special ed, are they leaving and going into special ed somewhere else? Or are they saying they don't want to do special ed, period?
I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but I don't believe so. I don't think they're staying in special education. Oops, sorry. Probably wasn't allowed. You raised
No,
it.
it's fine. You're fine. So to answer your question, yes, they are actually getting out of the field completely. So they aren't going to go work for another district. I know that Billings has 18 openings right now currently for special education teachers. So it's not just Laurel. The fact that we started with the full staff was pretty remarkable. Unfortunately, we were not able to keep them, and they did leave the industry altogether. It is a difficult job, a lot of behaviors you can't predict. So we can't possibly train them to say these are the behaviors when we don't even know the behaviors ourselves. So, and then of course, like she was saying, the extraordinary amount of paperwork that they're required to do in the same amount of time a regular gen ed teacher is required to do is phenomenal. So that is why, to answer your question, Chris, with the exit interviews, that's what I'm seeing. It's a difficult job, and I mean, it takes really a special person to want to do it.
So do we just keep saying this is hard and just keep on looking, or do we have any proposed changes that we're going to look at?
That's one of the reasons why we put in the coaches, and we're trying really hard to keep that person as a coach. Because it is great that Casey can go over and she has to do some coverage. We know that. But now she's not coaching. She's not going over and working with other new staff members at middle school or supporting a move as much, even though it's a veteran from south to west. Is there some support there? Because that's a whole new staff and a whole new aides and a whole new group. So, I mean, we're trying to put in things for as many supports as we can. And the coaching system, I think, is a great system. But honestly, it'd be great to lower caseloads, hire more teachers. But we all know that's a budgetary issue. Right now, we get money from the state, the feds, or from the feds through the state for special ed funding, but it funds 45% of our special ed costs. And that's not new to us, that's everybody. But they don't fund, okay, what's your special ed needs at Laurel Public Schools? Well, then we're going to fund what you actually have. And if you have lower numbers, then you get a little bit less money. If you have greater numbers or have a kid move in, some schools, like Wyoming, for example, they have a funding model in special ed that's called an actual funding model. So it's an actual cost funding model. So if you were to bring some kids in a school, you could do a budget amendment and then get more money from the state because you incurred more costs than what you originally anticipated because a kid might have moved in. In Laurel, Montana, if we were to get a family move in tomorrow, it required all sorts of extra funds. We don't get anything extra. We just have to figure out a way to do it. So it hurts us a little bit on the funding model. That doesn't answer your question, but yeah, we'll do everything we can to try to support them. But when we're pulling coaches out of coaching roles to sub, I'm not talking about subbing for a period here or there. I'm talking about, hey, we need you over at South. You got to be there full time. Therefore, I'm not doing other jobs. It's not supporting other people. And I worry about that because that's not what they signed up to do anyway. They want there to help coach and help teachers. So it's yeah, it's not just an us problem. That's not an excuse. It's just hard right now. Right now, we're looking at about a 75% reduction in teaching graduates in the last 5 or 6 years. Where you graduated 100, now schools are graduating 25.
I'd like this to be placed on maybe the appropriate committee, because that discussion here probably is just adding to the time really, and we're not going to solve anything. But have you learned anything in the exit interview process that you're going to feed the interview process from, so that we aren't hiring teachers that want to leave their career?
I can't, no, because the ones that leave were a little on the shock side, because they come in very gung-ho, very excited about doing their jobs. I'm going into SPED, and then all of a sudden they're overwhelmed and they can't do it. I would hope that maybe.
Okay, so they didn't know what the job entailed then when they came to Laurel?
What's the question?
We hired somebody that didn't really know what the job entailed?
So some of the teachers were new this year. Yes, they were brand new teachers, had never had a classroom before.
And then we're also not, the reason we were very surprised that we had all of our positions filled is we're not getting a lot of applicants. And that is like, well, we're choosing this person out of 8 that applied. Well, in some cases, we're choosing this one out of 1 that applied. And so, and that's not trying to bash our teachers, but when you, administrators, same thing. When we lower, I mean, look what you guys had to do to get a superintendent. I mean, at some point, you're just scraping the bottom of the barrels on things. So, but it's true. I mean, if this district 20 years ago would have had 40 superintendent applications, you couldn't have probably figured out which 20 you wanted to interview. And it's more and more difficult as we go down the line. it's just, it's an education problem. It's not even a Montana problem. It's a nationwide issue. And it's getting worse, and there's no magic bullet.
Is there any kind of outside the box thinking that would help? I mean, can we consolidate locations? I mean, do we have to have? There's probably
That was one thing that we had. We had a couple of ideas that we were thinking. We were thinking about a life skills classroom over at Graph to eliminate some of those bigger behaviors and put them all into one school. We also were thinking about working with the principals and giving them more time within their schedules to do some of these heavy paperwork things. So we have thought about, we're open to ideas big time.
It's really hard with the way the schools are leveled. So by law, you have to be careful because they're supposed to be around their same age peers on a comprehensive campus. So if we said we wanted to take, 10 of the kids that are most violent or aggressive behaviors and put them onto one campus, generally those students are not cognitively low. So they're students that would be in the general education classroom with the service of special education. So they have to be able to mainstream and be in their gen ed classrooms. So with the way the buildings are set up, where it's just the 2 grade levels, makes it really, really hard for special education for a lot of reasons, but that is a really big one because you have to have more staff the way we're set up.
We also have thought about a stipend for special education teachers. I know Billings offers a stipend for their special education teachers, but they still have 18 openings, so I'm not sure throwing money at it is the right answer either.
That's what I was wondering, if there's a scaling thing we could do like you just mentioned, or, is a lot of it, if it's the teachers being taken out of what they're passionate about, which is helping these special needs students, and they're instead like spending the majority of their time or a significant portion in paperwork, are there programming and software solutions that could help streamline some of that documentation effort and give the teacher back more educational time versus time just filling out paperwork, and also maybe not putting it onto our building admin as much, or kind of leveraging both sides of that, building admin and some software solutions that could help?
So there's a few things that we could do, and these are just things that I've been involved with in the past, but you can train like a paraprofessional, one of the aides, to do assessments. So you could have 1 or 2 aides trained to give the academic portion of the assessment. It does not have to be the teacher because the teacher is in the building with the aide. So like that would be one piece that you could alleviate from them so that they could spend more time in the classrooms. It doesn't mean that we will get aides to do that, but that could be an option to look at to free up some of their time so that they're not missing. Because when they're pooling students, we have to remember they have one prep. So if they're having a lesson plan, if they're having to, so most of them are pooling students when they should be in the classroom giving the services. Because during their prep, if they have a behavior, they miss their prep. How do we get them back their prep? We can't. So you get a lot of people that are frustrated, they're burnt out. And they were burnt out like a month into school because it's just so much.
Well, leveling the schools to, do you feel, because like you said, more buildings, more staff?
Need more staff. I do, yes, I do think it will help some, definitely.
Do you know how large the stipend is in Billings?
$12.50.
$12.50 a semester, I think,
Well,
isn't
maybe
it?
it is a
I
semester,
think
it's
so.
$12.50.
I think it's $2,500 a year,
That's pretty common, it's 25.
and I believe they get 2 preps.
Yes,
Lori,
most
does
schools,
that sound right?
they have a prep and a paperwork period.
Billings? I want to say they do.
Can we work more closely with MSUB students so they're more prepared to what they're going to walk into once they roll up on their first days of?
I think the hard thing is that they don't get, so looking at like what I had to do in grad school versus like now when I talk to student teachers and stuff, I had 7 classes in behavior. They have 1 here. And so they're not ready for what they're walking into.
Can you maybe explore some sort of like additional student teaching so that way we get more help from the student teachers and they get more education on what the field is like something like maybe partner with MSCB or some, like, I don't know, just to gain more preparation.
We kind of collaborate with Tracy over at MSUB, but they get to pick where they go and they get to do all of these different things.
Well, even if they don't choose Laurel, we're still getting help from a student teacher while they're there. I don't know, maybe just thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The ideas.
Right. I mean, there's 7 kids that graduated with SPED. Those could have been here learning in the classroom and providing relief for our full-time staff, potentially, maybe. I don't know.
Well, and they have rules too, like they can only
They're
sub for
limited,
10
yeah.
days and it has to be in the class where their mentor teacher is. So they have all kinds of little rules like that.
Can we just find out for a future meeting what the union stance would be if we wanted to do a stipend? Would they be in favor? Ask them, maybe.
I'd add maybe adding another period of flex time for those special ed teachers.
Want another input before we, no. Right.
Yes. And I can add that to the agenda for you guys on your side. Okay.
Is this something that we can point foundation towards? Something that would be helpful to them?
I think it'd be information that, one of the things, our foundation is a fairly small foundation, and I know they don't, and again, I'm just familiar with a few foundations, alumni foundations that are very far-reaching, and they go out to, you know, the class of 62, and they work on collecting from people who long since left the community but have done really well, trying to, almost like a college donation types setup. And so they're dealing with, you know, with hundreds of thousands of dollars and not, you know, thousands of dollars. But it really takes like in Billings, for example, they have a foundation president, I don't know what they call them, foundation CEOs, yeah. So those are full-time paid positions through the foundation, and ours are really relying on volunteer work and kind of dedicated individuals. So really it would be taking that next step and then really putting this kind of information out there to say, hey, it's a tax credit, it's a this, you can give to the school and start thinking on a much larger scale.
I just know that a lot of times they're looking for ways to raise money for the foundation, and
Great example.
would be, yeah, so if we could point this in their direction.
Sure. So you guys asked about the, it's not just administrative concealed carry in schools, it's also some school districts like Shepherd, it could be any armed staff member. There's a process there. I've gotten some model policies, 1705, 1705F. For whatever reason, Shepherd has them as 5005, 5005F, but similar policies and just Shepherd's take on it. I did bring this subject matter to the safety and security meeting today. That involves our SROs and just some members, representatives from each school, administration and counselors and such. And I told them that I would bring any concerns or any questions that they had back to this group. And I wrote those down here. Something from the SROs. SROs said that when they do go into any type of a school weapon situation, there's a lot of unknowns. And they're a little worried because if they're walking into school, everyone's ramped up. There's a potential weapon on campus. They're coming in hot and heavy with additional officers. Are they walking around the corner and I'm holding the gun? Or some staff member, whatever. So there's a worry they have with there. And I said I would bring that on to you guys because there's so many unknown variables and they're not sure they want another unknown variable. I would pass that on. They did ask about another teacher asked about the liability through our insurance. And I said, that's a good question. I've never addressed the insurance with it and what that changes or if it does. What is the expectation of the person with the firearm? So there was a few questions that came out was, okay, so if I am carrying a firearm on campus, what's the expectation? If there's a potential weapon at the middle school, am I headed over there? Is that my expectation that I'm headed to the middle school? So they said, what's the expectation if I'm a middle school teacher and I'm approved to conceal carry? What's my expectation in my classroom if something's potentially going on at the office, right? Or if they hear a shot. So they just had all those questions. And I said, those are all super questions. And I would put them out in front of this group just as discussion points. But I'll go ahead and let you guys talk a little bit now. That was some of the concerns and questions that I had today from the security meeting.
I just wanted to throw out there that last week I did listen in on the School Board Association School Safety, Security, and Innovation Symposium, and they had all day, the first day was an organization called SEC, and I'm sorry, I can't tell you what that stands for, but they talked all day long about safety in schools and how to approach these things, and they advised against policies like this, which I thought was interesting. They were there for School Board Association, but they highly recommended it be a third party like SROs and security company.
Schools can, there's a policy out there for the school board to appoint a school marshal, which could be a third party, could be a hired security. So they do have the school, there's a policy out there that where a school could appoint a school marshal, which would be equivalent to maybe, hey, we can't hire an SRO in Circle, Montana, but we do have, retired somebody who would come in who's trained military or law enforcement, who we could hire as a school marshal.
I just wanted to mention that because it did come out at their trainings.
I had a question. I think the SRO brings up a good point because they're not trained to, they are shoot, don't shoot trained, but it's also like in that moment, how would they handle an armed teacher walking around the corner? All they're going to see is the guy with the gun or a gal with a gun. I guess how fast, and maybe because I read that, I liked that Shepherd policy, but the thing that they pointed out was it takes the average response time's 18 or 19 minutes, but we have in their locality, we have SROs in our buildings every day. How fast could the high school SRO get to West? It's going to be a lot less than 18 minutes, 19 minutes. They could get there in 3 minutes. So are we more or less covered than Shepherd School, I guess, is my question in earnest. Are we more covered because of our proximity to each other and the fact that we already have staff SROs?
Shepherd relies on county sheriff's deputies, whereas we would have a city police. And they do have an SRO they share with Huntley, but obviously, every other day kind of a thing.
A lot of that response time is going to be dictated by information and how it flows. You know, just because something happens doesn't mean things are found out right away. So something happens at West, it gets called into 911, and then it gets kicked over to the police station, he gets kicked over to the SRO, and then he has to run out to his car, and then he drives. I mean, there's a process there, but I think we're getting the cart and the horse a little bit reversed right now. I don't know where this necessarily came from. I like having a discussion about it, but I think we need to find out if there's actually interest in looking into this further before we get into details about it. I mean, does the board want to consider having armed? Right, that's what I'm saying. Right now, we're talking about all the intricacies and how we would handle it, but I mean, let's decide if it's something we want to. There's definitely challenges with it, but they're all can be worked out, right? But are there teachers that are asking for this? I mean, where did this come from? Why is the board reviewing this right
now? 3 or 4 months ago. It did originate here. I wanted to follow up on it. You know, for example, Shepherd's has theirs since the summer, I believe. They haven't had anyone actually apply for it. So it's not like if you put it in that suddenly, you know, there's just everyone carrying heat around the school. That isn't how it's going to work. But
That's my big thing, is I'd like to know if there's interest, because in looking at Shepherd's policy, it's fairly decently written, but if you look at some of the items in there, some of them are in there as recommendations, but also required number of rounds. I mean, it's not a cheap thing they're asking to do. Those courses that they think that they're listing in there that they want to have, I mean, it could take you 5 years to get through some of that stuff if they want you to do all those courses, and there might not even be people teaching them around here, you know? Right, so you're looking at a substantial expense. So before I just want to know if there's interest. How many teachers do we have that would be interested in doing this?
I have no clue. That'd be up to the board.
I mean, I like the way Shepherd's was, is it's not assigned to a position, but assigned to an individual with desire. So it could be an admin, or it could be the second grade teacher who has the desire and the aptitude to go through what is quite a gauntlet of training in order to obtain this ability. There is something, like I agree, like Shepherd set up a very nice system, but it's also an enormous barrier to entry for a teacher. But I don't know that as I was thinking about it as I read through it, I don't know if I'd want it any less if a teacher's gonna, because our law enforcement officers have this training. So why would we expect less of our teachers should do the same duty or have that same expectation that they would run into the line of fire without training, so to speak?
Concealed carry permit is not a standard we want to meet here. Because to get a concealed carry, all you have to do is take hunter safety, and Montana's a do not deny state. So that's not really something that should be in the discussion. I mean, there should be some training. Just off the top of my head, if I was to set up a program like this the way that I would want to do it, I don't know that I would want, and I'm very pro-gun, I don't know that I would want a teacher carrying all day long. I would almost rather have 1 or 2 designated react areas and with weapons that are secured, and then people in the building that have authorized access to those areas. It's not as quick of a response as you would have with somebody on their person, but at the same time, I think it's a lot easier to control. That'd be something to look at possibly, and I'd want to hear from law enforcement as well.
Forever. A lot of us haven't been, but when we have brought in the training to use the spray gel stuff that's in our, thank you. However many years ago that was, they did survey staff, and less than 1% thought that they would ever want to carry it. So it's like, why are, I'm with you, why waste your time on it if it's, at that time, it was like 1% of our staff or less was like,
no. My job is to protect these 20 kids and I don't have time to be doing that if, so that was 8, 9, long time ago, years ago. It was about 1% of our staff at the time was interested, so. Because it was the same thing with this Reflex Protect. At the same time, they talked about this somehow in there. And then and I don't know if it was just an informal survey. I don't know if there's results anywhere to look at, but very small percentage of the staff.
Can we survey the staff and come back with that?
If we want to, we can.
I actually think that's a decent idea, and I would do it as a multi-phrased question or multifaceted question where if staff was authorized to carry, would you? If staff was authorized to carry and had to go through the training requirements and pay for them on their own, would you? If staff was authorized to carry and the district covered the expenses, would you? But maybe look at different ways, and if there's interest, because there's a substantial amount. The way the Shepherd's looking at that, 600 to 700 rounds initially, and 300 rounds a year. I mean, right there, you're looking at a decent expense, just in shooting, just in pulling the trigger without any training at all. So.
The way that I look at this, we need to know what staff are willing to do this. But if I got a call and found out that a shooter was in my kid's school, what room do I want my kid to be in? I definitely would want him in the room where the teacher was packing and to protect them if there was a school shooter. I mean, I don't have as big of a concern with it. I do because the weapon itself can be taken away and turned on somebody else, but proper training will eliminate some of that. But I'm not for it if staff aren't for it because it's useless to have. So, but I definitely would want my child to be in that classroom where the teacher was trained to carry and to protect that classroom. So.
Sorry. If the district, I mean, we should pool the district and survey the district. But if we're going to be offering to pay for all the trainings and all the rounds, I'm honestly more interested in a third-party person who's not going to be in just one classroom and who could potentially, like the Marshall idea, I kind of like, because we know he'd be trained and is willing to take it on, and he's not busy trying to teach the kids. He has that one job, because some of the questions that your safety committee did was like, what happens if there's a shooter? Are we going to keep track of these 20 kids, or are they supposed to go out and confront the shooter? So I'm more interested in the Marshall idea, but we should for sure. I like this survey, because that we need to know what the interest is. Well, and I think that it's worth pointing out that the majority of school shootings are pre-planned, and these individuals are taking the time to know the target they're going to. And even if we have no one, I like Shepherd's because you don't know who that person is or if they have anyone, to be honest, is that there's the possibility that we have someone in our school that has a gun besides our SROs because they're not at every school. And so it's the knowledge that there could be for somebody that's pre-planning something like this that may be the little deterrent that keeps them from coming. And I agree with Chris that it's like, given the option of sending my kids to anywhere, a school or elsewhere where I know that there's protection, I would rather have them at a place where there's someone there that's able to defend them.
I do agree. I always want to get really close to that, but I do agree it could be a deterrent. However, I think that, so in our meeting today, there was somebody that brought up, what is going to be the job of, what is the expectation of the teacher who's packing? Is it going to be to run and hide? Or is it going to be to go after or be out there just in case? Because you're going to have teachers running and hiding with their kids, or you have the teacher that is packing and is running and hiding. Is that person going to be a coward, or is that person going to be supposed to be out there and helping out. Also, my wife has gone to many classes. I own a lot of rifles. I do not own, actually, I have a little 22 pistol. And she goes and she shoots 9mm, so it's kind of funny every time we go shooting because mine goes ping, ping, and hers goes bang, bang. But she's gone to a lot of different classes and stuff, and I think this is why I feel that I wouldn't want guns in the hands of teachers or even myself. Is it's one thing when I'm at the range and I'm getting taught and I'm going through different scenarios and stuff like that. I'm in the range, I'm at a range. I'm not doing anything, like what police do where they have different scenarios and stuff like that. All of a sudden then I'm going to turn this back. All of a sudden I'm in a situation where I am having people coming towards me or a person coming towards me with a gun. I pull my gun out and I'm trying to save a life and I shoot my own kids on accident. And don't say that's not going to happen. That will happen. And that's why I'm against it. I'm all for guns. I have a ton of them. I almost need to buy a new safe. I don't even know where I got them all, but that's why I feel that it gets really scary. It's one thing, and I use this as an analogy, but I'm not saying teachers or staff or even administrators are like this. It's one thing so just have a puppy pass the dog obedience class and did it with flying colors. However, I take him home and the stupid dog won't come when I ask him to come. He's not stupid, he's really sweet, but you're getting what I'm saying. It's one thing in class, it's the other thing in real life. So I just think as we move forward with this, I think it's a great discussion, but think of the true real life scenario. And you can't pick and choose who's going to carry and who's not. If you open it up,
Yes, we will.
if you open it up to teachers and they follow all the everything that's in that, you can't say no to you and yes to you.
Well, it depends how we set the policy. We could say we want 3 per building. We could do it any different way we want. But I do agree with everything you're saying so far. I think it's and I don't want to interrupt, so stop me if you're still going. With regards to the responsibilities of a teacher, if I was to set the policy today and I was going to write it out, I would say there is 0 responsibility. It's a voluntary thing. A teacher's carrying it for their own protection, the protection of their students, and whoever else they feel like protecting that day. So if they're walking down the hallway and they have a chance to help out, great, go for it. If they're in their classroom and they hear gunshots, it's up to them if they want to react or if they want to stay and protect their kids. That's the way I would write the policy. That said,
So any teacher could grab it.
That's
Oh,
no. I'm right now I'm saying if it's concealed carry on somebody's person. No, if it was
I'm just being devil's advocate.
If it was in a React safe, there would only be certain people that had access to that, whether it's via fingerprint or code or key or whatever. But back to your second point, and to the board, I mean, yeah, the hardest thing that anybody's going to have to do in a situation like that is looking past the target. They see the target, they don't see what's past there. So I'm a 2A to the core, 100%, right? We'll see who has more guns later. But yes, I could see a situation where you have tunnel vision, there's my target, it's a threat, bullets are going, and they don't know that there's a door right there full of 30 kids. So that's my biggest concern as well. And that's why you have this extremely strenuous requirements that have to be made before somebody's allowed to carry.
But just to reiterate what I was saying, I don't want to make it so it's not being understood. So let's say, because most districts, and I believe this is kind of how Shepherd did it, was, and I looked through it, had some requirements in there for teachers. And so the teachers all meet those requirements. And they will all meet them. So at that time, you have a teacher that's already a little unstable, administrators as well. We're all different mentalities. And you can't say yes to Julie and no to me if I met those requirements. And, Julie would be much better. No, I'm calling me unstable. Julie would be much better, and I would be all crazy, but I still meet the requirements to be carrying. And maybe we have rules in there where it can't be carried on, you need to be locked up. But I'm kind of, don't agree, but I'm kind of, not as organized as Mrs. Robertus and all this other stuff. And so all of a sudden I don't lock my gun all the time in the cabinet, where Julie would be really good at that, but I met all the requirements. And so then it's not, is the administration going to be going around and checking things? And maybe we are, just one more thing, but it's just a liability. It adds a lot more liability. It's not as clean as it appears. Just stuff to be considering and thinking about is all I'm saying.
And that's why I like the lockbox idea, not with a key, but with an access, because if a teacher was allowed to carry and they left their key laying somewhere, what's the punishment going to be? A letter of reprimand? In the Marine Corps, if you leave your M16 laying around, the punishment is, for them, it's close to death at the time, but it still happens. So yeah, you will have somebody, if it's a keyed lockbox, somebody will lose a key at some point. It'll happen.
So I've been thinking about, as we've been talking too, like, I think there's not just like the teachers who'd be willing, but like what teachers would be comfortable knowing that's there in the building too, because it's their workplace. And then I think also students would be important that they are comfortable with it too. I just think like my little first grader, she's having a hard time with the lockdown stuff. And she's not someone who gets like anxiety or worries about things like at all, but she's like worried about lockdown. So, which is something I had never anticipated one of my kids feeling that way. So I'd like to know what the kids feel about it too. But then as we've talked, like in my mind, if it's going to be an expense to the district or because I don't know what teacher is going to bear that burden of financially to do it, is it smarter to talk about adding a third SRO or the marshal? I mean, I think if we already have SROs, maybe we just add a third one. We don't need a separate entity. We could still just use regular law enforcement to help with this too. So is it just we want more coverage? Is the end game more coverage, or is it the sort of the anonymity of like, hey, I don't know, or is it a combination of both? Is it we approve this and we have those strict requirements? If somebody wants to go through the gauntlet and get it, great, but then it's also just in the public's view, it's an unknown. There could be 6 people, armed teachers in there, or there could be 0. I'm going to roll the dice if I go in there as a deterrent, plus maybe boosting our SRO coverage. So I think there's a lot to consider. Yeah, again, not just the people who would carry the firearm, but the comfortability of the staff and students that
Well, and I guess when we say staff too, it should be all staff. I know that one of the schools that has this, one of the people that carries is a custodian. It's not even an administrator or a teacher, which actually gives you more flexibility in a situation because they're not in a classroom with 20 kids.
throwing themselves in front of their students. But they will learn there to put because we're afraid, because they're mental or they're having a bad day. I don't know, guys. We're running on fear, but we're not looking at, our teachers would do anything for our students. Why don't we give them the opportunity to decide if they want to? That's all I'm asking. If they don't want to, then that's fine. They don't have to. But if they want to and they want to protect and they want to use their Second Amendment, they're going to go to all classes. I know, I'm sure some of those students, we all live in Montana. Guns aren't something unique to our students. I'm sure they've been hunting, they've seen it, they live it, breathe it sometimes at their own house. So I'm sorry, but I mean, one fear or the other fear.
Like to say that before, I know we're preliminary discussing this, but I'm thinking that maybe taking some time and researching the costs and the benefits of what we're discussing tonight and compare it to the costs and the benefits of supporting the mental health of our community, the mental health of our kids, and see if by us looking at it from a proactive stance of supporting our mental health needs, maybe that's an avenue we could look at as well and compare them. And I think as you're comparing both of them, that way you're making an informed decision. It's not about whether you carry a gun or not. It's about also, are we servicing the mental health needs of our students to the best of our ability? And I think by looking at both, then you can make more of an informed decision about what direction you even want to go in. That's just my opinion.
I think it's important to note that we already have the ability to give anybody that asks permission to carry. We don't, our policies already allow that. And as far as I know, we've never had anybody ask to carry. So that's why I think the first step, I'm not opposed to it at all, but I think the first step is to find out if there's any interest and at what level, what the commitment level is from each side. Set up.
We still have CTE. Okay, perfect.
Missed or that we need to bring back up? Okay, so I'm hearing a request for a 5-minute recess. For those of you, we will be going into an executive session, so you don't have to stay. If you'd like to hear me close it, you're more than welcome. But since it's 8:44, let's just do a 5-minute break. Is that good? Okay.